Thank you, Chair, and thank you both as well for coming to give evidence. Can I move us on to the role of private companies in labour market exploitation, and perhaps specifically to ask you about the 2015 legislation, which from all parts of the political spectrum and across both houses of Parliament, there was solid support for the measures that Theresa May introduced at the time when she was Home Secretary, and regarded it as really a flagship piece of legislation. Section 54, though, if I can take you to Section 54 of that Act, analysis that was carried out in, I think, 2022 by the Financial Reporting Council found that 1 in 10 companies failed to provide a modern slavery statement in line with Section 54. Can you tell the committee what more can be done to increase compliance with Section 54 of the 2015 legislation? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I think there needs to be some quite serious repercussions for not complying with it. I think it's a piece of legislation that I think is good in many ways because it gave the GLA the powers that we have. But certainly in that area, I think it needs to be strengthened up, and there needs to be consequences for companies not complying with it. It's too easy not to.
Yes, and I think as well as introducing some kind of fines, I think there needs to be a mechanism for review of statements to identify the risks as well as best practice, because there are some companies who report not just to say everything is okay, but to say we have identified that in our supply chain there is an issue and we are working on resolving that. But there's no mechanism for reviewing those statements, so they can just sit on a website and not be paid any attention. So it's kind of a piece of empty.
That's a very helpful response. And can I drill down a bit deeper? Because in 2019 there was independent analysis of the Modern Slavery Act, and there were a number of recommendations. Now, if you're unable to respond to them as I read them out now, perhaps in writing to the committee afterwards, if you could comment on what perhaps could be implemented best and would be most useful. They said there should be mandatory reporting in all areas of interest, mandatory reporting on planned future steps and reporting on every stage of supply chains, failure to report, failure to act to become an offence under the Company Directors Disqualification Act of 1986 and lead to court summonses, sanctions and fines, amongst other measures, government-run repository on all statements, reporting requirements extended to public sector bodies, non-compliant companies to become ineligible for public sector contracts. And if you even had to just pull out one of those, but as I say, if you were able to write to us afterwards about that, these are not my proposals, these are part of the independent analysis that was done in 2019. Elysia.
Yes.
I think I'll take your invitation to write to you on those points.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you?
Yes, I can only say that I do agree with the recommendations that are made in that report. There does need to be some kind of outcome for people who do not comply.
Or an incentive to apply their minds to it.
Yes, yes. And I think, if people are ineligible for contracts, for example, that might be the point at which they realise they need to do something about it.
When you write to us, can you prioritise, because it's quite a long shopping list, which ones, if you could get the government to do anything, what would be the most important, what would have the most impact, and in what order would you take them? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David. That's excellent.